Have you ever kept staring at the mirror because of how beautiful you are, or think you're smarter than everyone else in the room? Would that make you a narcissist? This is Carl. Carl has narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, which is actually not that difficult to describe. NPD is defined as a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, need for admiration, and lack of empathy. It is a common disorder in the US. About 5.3% of the US population have NPD, and more than half of the adults diagnosed are men. Just like Carl. Carl and other people diagnosed with NPD expect everyone to love them as much as they love themselves, and are either constantly envious of others or believe others are envious of them. Carl is able to understand others at an intellectual level, but to some extent and in some situations, he has difficulties empathizing with people at an emotional level. Besides the empathy issues, Carl's NPD makes him have an overwhelming fear of failure and criticism. So to answer the question of whether you have NPD, it actually takes more than just staring at yourself in the mirror. There are two types of NPD, grandiose and vulnerable. The grandiose subtype is more overt, characterized by a feeling of superiority, and is often aggressive and bold. Imagine people with high self-esteem constantly talking about themselves and exaggerating their achievements. The vulnerable subtype, on the other hand, is more covert, hypersensitive, insecure, and defensive. Someone with the vulnerable subtype is more introverted, but still has a big social circle, with a caveat that relationships are not usually at a personal level. This subtype is more sensitive to criticism and tends to blame others when something goes wrong. So if you don't have a big group of friends, you're probably not a vulnerable narcissist. What about love? Can Carl love someone else? People with NPD have sky-high standards, and the relationship may often be transactional. Moreover, having dysfunctional empathy makes it hard for people with NPD to appropriately respond emotionally and express care toward their partner. Some neuroimaging studies found that people diagnosed with NPD have gray matter abnormalities in the prefrontal and insular regions of the brain. These areas are related to reasoning and awareness of one's feelings. All these regions also overlap with the empathy neural circuitry, which could explain why people with NPD have a limited capacity for emotional empathy. Despite the confidence and arrogance some narcissists display, their brains tell a different story. In fMRI scans, the prefrontal cortex and the ventral striatum, brain parts related to the ability to think positively about oneself, seem to have lower activity. So the behavior displayed might actually be hiding insecurities. It is quite a tricky personality disorder, where brain activity does not connect with the behavior people usually notice. Currently, there are no established treatments for narcissistic personality disorder. Talk therapy could help, but as you can imagine, it's difficult for someone with NPD to even search for help, since they would first have to recognize that they have a problem. Having narcissistic traits can sometimes be helpful. It can help us be more confident, charismatic, and assertive. But like every personality trait, once it reaches a certain severity, frequency, and duration, it becomes a mental health condition. If you're interested in understanding other personality disorders that put a strain on relationships, watch this video on borderline personality disorder.